What's going on, guys? It's your boy the Markham Knight. Today's video is going to be about the DC Cinematic Universe again, but this time it's going to be about my expectations for the movies moving forward and for the DC Cinematic Universe as a whole. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to jump right in, and you always got to start here with Justice League. Yep, that's Justice League. Now, I'm very excited for this movie because I've been waiting for a Justice League movie back since the cartoon was out, back since I was reading comic books as a little kid, and a lot of other people have too. Looked like we were going to get a Justice League movie in 2008. That didn't happen, but it does look like this one's going to be even better than that one. So let's go ahead and jump right into what I think is going to happen. They said the movie's going to strongly focus on Steppenwolf and the army of Darkseid. For those of you who don't know, Steppenwolf is Darkseid's uncle. He's also the main general in Darkseid's army. So it is going to feature prominently about that. But before I talk any more about the plot, I do want to talk a little bit about Superman. For those of you who don't know, spoiler alert, Superman died in Batman vs. Superman. Now, they are going to bring him back. The question is how they will bring him back. I really want to see the black suit. A lot of people have been talking about the beard, but they're not getting it right, because if Superman comes back from the death of Doomsday the way he came back in the comics, it's going to be him being in a Kryptonian coma and being in stasis in the Fortress of Solitude, and then coming back with the mullet, no beard. But that's the way he came back in the comics. He had the silver shield. But later, I think people are confusing it with the Superman that came back after Convergence, who had the beard, also had a silver shield, also was wearing black. It seems like every time Superman's died in the comic books, he's come back wearing a black suit. Even in Earth 2, when Superman died, well, at least they thought he died, and then when he came back, he was wearing the black and red suit, and in that one, he was brought back by Darkseid, and he was working for Darkseid. That turned out to be Bizarro, but it was very cool. He was working for Bizarro, and he had a red and black thing going on, so that'd be pretty cool as well. It'd be interesting to see which way they bring him back here, if he does come back as one of Darkseid's actual men and actually is fighting for him, or if he comes back for the Justice League to save them from Darkseid. Now let's talk about Darkseid. For those of you who don't know, people who know Thanos from Marvel, Thanos was actually based on Darkseid a little bit. If you look at the side-by-side picture, you can see that he's almost an exact replica, and he came out about just 2 years later, I think, or maybe 1 year later, but it was very close. Darkseid did come first, and he's basically the all-time destroyer of things. He's a world destroyer. He's a universe-level threat. And he's basically, well, he's a multi-universe level threat, but he's basically, he can absorb, he absorbs planets basically, and what he might happen is from Justice League in the actual comic book in the New 52, Darkseid came there to terraform Earth, to turn it like Apocalypse, because he needed a new planet, and he was turned back by the forces on Earth itself. And this is the Prime Universe. It's the first time any universe and any planet has been able to stop Darkseid, which is very important. I do think it's going to follow like that. You can watch the animated movie Justice League War if you want to see more of that happen. I do feel like Darkseid's going to be in this movie, and even though we haven't seen anything about him, I feel like he's going to feature in the third act. I feel like his forces are going to be falling, and they're going to be losing, and then he's going to step in. And I feel like once he does step in, he's going to overwhelm the Justice League, and it's going to be Superman that's going to come and save the day and send him back to Apocalypse. That's my feelings about Justice League. That's what I think is going to happen. I'm going to go ahead and jump right into the next movie, Aquaman. Aquaman looks very good. For those of you who don't know James Wan is the director. He's a great director. He normally does horror films. He did Conjuring, he did Saw, he did Annabelle, he did Furious 7, he did Insidious. So he showed that he could do kind of team-up movies with Furious 7, but he's also done a bunch of these horror movies and stuff, but he's never had this kind of budget to work with, and he's never had this kind of atmosphere to work with. So I really want to see what he does with Aquaman. Jason Momoa is a very different Aquaman than the Aquaman people used to make fun of from the Super Friends. Jason Momoa is a beast of a person. He's about 6'4", 6'5", and he's ripped, he's jacked. And he looks like, he's basically going to be the new 52 Aquaman. Or if any of you remember the Aquaman from the 90s with the hook for a hand, he might be something along those kind of lines. But the new 52 Aquaman was redone by Jeff Johns, and he looked really cool. But even more than that, he was done right. His story was cool again. He was made more badass. and that was kind of the Jeff Johns impact of kind of turning him around and turning him from a joke to a really cool character, which he actually is. There was a preview at Comic-Con. I was at Hall H. I'm going to leave a link down below of the Hall H panel. Within that Hall H panel, you can even see me. I'm asking a question from the Justice League cast, but we were in there and we saw Aquaman show some concept art. In that concept art, it showed the undersea, underwater actual army. And when they asked Aquaman, someone asked Aquaman, whose army was that? Was that Black Manta's army? And he said, Black Manta doesn't have an army like that. That army was Ocean Master's. For those of you who don't know Ocean Master is Orm. That is Aquaman's brother, and he basically is trying to take the king and crown away from Aquaman. And Jason Momoa himself has admitted that Aquaman is not the king yet, so I do feel like that's going to be a little like Throne of Atlantis in the actual comic books. You can read the comic books, or you can watch the movie Throne of Atlantis if you want some background more on Aquaman. Let's talk about the next one they announced. It was Shazam. Now, there is a tape that came out of Parker Young, who did an audition for Shazam, and although his portrayal wasn't great, and I do feel like that's a bit of generic reading for him to just kind of get an idea of what that's going to be about, it does look like a very interesting movie. Shazam might be the movie that little kids really like, because kids have always wanted to become superheroes, and this is basically a kid's dream of having superhero powers being realized. So it's a little kid with a superhero's body and superhero's powers with the responsibilities of being a superhero. Now, they did say that Black Adam would not be in the Shazam movie and he would get his own movie. For those of you who don't know, Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, has already been confirmed to play Black Adam, but he's going to play his own movie. And The Rock has said Black Adam is an anti-hero. He didn't say he's a villain, so he will not be in the Shazam movie, he will not be the villain of that movie, he will be an anti-hero. Black Adam's own story is really cool. Basically, he loses his wife and everything, and his fight is for the fight for Kahndaq. Kahndaq is basically a Middle Eastern state that was not really... It's not really a real one, it's just kind of something made up by them, kind of like Wakanda for Marvel. It's just something that's been made up, but he's basically the king of there, and he is basically protecting his people. So that's his anti-hero story. If we go back to Shazam though, he will not be featured. That means they'll probably feature the 7 deadly sins. For those of you who don't know, there are 7 deadly sins. It's like greed, rage, and stuff like that, and they might be loose on the world, and Shazam would have to stop them. I don't know for sure if that's going to be it, but Shazam is basically like a magical superhero who has magic powers, and it's going to be a little kid who's going to get to possess those powers, which is pretty cool. Next movie they announced was Suicide Squad 2. I'm not quite excited for this yet. I do love the 3 characters that I mentioned in the previous video, Amanda Waller, Deadshot, and Harley Quinn. I do want to see them more. Harley Quinn's supposed to get some sort of Joker story. It's going to be maybe like a mad love thing going on, which would be kind of cool. But her in Suicide Squad, just if you're going to do Suicide Squad, I don't want it to just be like a running soundtrack just for it to be funny. If David Ayer is going to do it, I want him to do it properly. I did like Fury, so I do know that he can do good movies. It's not about him being a bad director, it's just about him doing it right. They don't need to rush anything. There doesn't need to be weird jokes. I don't want to see Joker the way that I saw Joker. And Enchantress dance moves, no. Next movie I'm going to talk about is The Batman. The Batman, still apparently featuring Ben Affleck. Now, Matt Reeves is the person who is supposed to be directing it. For those of you who don't know Matt Reeves, he's done Cloverfield, he's done Let Me In, so he's done some horror movies. He's also the guy who kind of threw out the Planet of the Apes when they brought it back. He started it, he made it as awesome as it is, and he did that very, very well. So I'm kind of excited for that. What I do want to see, something that I heard that it might be happening, is the Arkham Asylum, which was done by Grant Morrison. It's basically Batman being locked inside of Arkham Asylum with a bunch of inmates, and the inmates are basically featuring his rogues gallery. His rogues gallery consists of everyone from Joker to Penguin to Mr. Freeze to Bane to Killer Croc to all these people, and he's locked in there, and he basically has to get his way out, which is very, very cool. Next movie I'm going to talk about is Justice League Dark. Justice League Dark's been in production for many, many years. They've been changing directors and stories and everything constantly. For those of you who don't know them, they're basically the mystical, magical version of the Justice League. Constantine, Zatanna, Dead Men are basically their trinity. You also have Swamp Thing and some other superheroes and stuff that would be in there. Maybe even Etrigan the Demon is going to be in it. But basically they're the Magical Justice League, so they deal with the magic matters. For those of you who want even more information on them, you can watch the actual, there's another video, basically a movie, animated movie that features them prominently. It's also called Justice League Dark, so you can definitely check that out. Batgirl, they announced Batgirl. It's interesting they announced Batgirl. I think that's more to do with Joss Whedon signing on. Now Joss Whedon, they asked him what he wanted to do for the DC Universe, and he specifically had an idea for Batgirl, and he pitched that to them when he was at that meeting, and they really liked it, and they are kind of gonna go run with it. There are a lot of stories that Batgirl has that she can kind of do. I'm really interested to see if whether or not we're gonna see Nightwing feature in that, because Barbara Gordon, who is Batgirl, she basically has a relationship with Dick Grayson, who's Nightwing, who used to be Robin, became Nightwing, and they've had a relationship, and they've in some stories even gotten to state where they're gonna get married, and they've been engaged. So it's going to be interesting to see if they kind of use that to spin off Nightwing, and if because they didn't announce Nightwing here, and they didn't announce the Black Adam movie either, so it's going to be interesting to see if that comes out of this, which is going to be very, very cool. The Green Lantern Corps. The Green Lantern Corps is very, very interesting because we have seen a Green Lantern movie, I think that was back in like 2011, with Ryan Reynolds. Ryan Reynolds was not the problem with that movie, and Mark Strong's Sinestro was the best thing about that movie, but there were a lot of other issues with it, and the script was the main part. There was a lot of issues that was going on with the Green Lantern movie, and that being the biggest part of it. But this, if they're going to do it again, I don't want to see another origin movie for Hal Jordan's Green Lantern. I want to see the Green Lantern Corps. I want to see them established. And if they're calling it the Green Lantern Corps, they should be established. I want to see 2 or 3 human Green Lanterns. They could put everybody in there. Hal, Guy, Jon Stewart, Kyle Rayner. They could even put in Simon Baz and Jessica Cruz. For those of you who don't know, Simon Baz is basically a Muslim superhero. So that's going to be interesting to play to that part. Jessica Cruz is a Mexican female superhero. So it'd be interesting to play those parts out and see if those are going to be put in there. Although I do feel like it is a little early for them to introduce all those people. Wonder Woman. Even before I talk about that, I do want to talk about what the storyline could be. The Sinestro Corps War would be cool. They could do something with Warworld, even though Warworld was kind of a part of the Sinestro Corps War. They could do something with that. For those of you who don't know what Warworld is basically Mongol. He has this world that he basically fights superpowered beings against each other, aliens against each other, and at one point he kidnapped Superman and made him fight for him, and that has featured in the Green Lantern storyline before, so it'd be cool to see something like that play out. Or they can even feature the New Gods. I heard that there was going to be a New Gods movie. It was not announced here. They can kind of use that, bring it in here, and spin it off onto its own thing. They have had something in the past between the Green Lanterns and the New Gods in Rebirth and in the New 52, so it'd be cool to see if they play off something like that. Wonder Woman 2 was announced. Wonder Woman 2 even got a release date before a lot of other movies. That's because it's running off the success of the Wonder Woman movie. Now, what has been big deal was Patty Jenkins returning. She got a lot of money, and that was mostly to do with women getting the same pay as men. And they announced that there might be Steve Trevor returning. Now, I'm not surprised by this. Why? Yes, Steve Trevor is dead. I do not want to see a nephew. I do not want to see a grandson. I do not want to see a son. Anything like that. I don't need to see anything like that. Wonder Woman, the key about Wonder Woman is she's linked closely to the Greek gods. Now, for those of you who know anything about the Greek gods, you know Hades. Hades is the god of the underworld. The god of the underworld means basically all the souls that die, they go to him, and he basically has them and tortures them. He's basically like devil for the Greek gods. And Wonder Woman does have a relationship with him in the comic books. So it'd be interesting to see her go to the underworld to get Steve Trevor's soul back. And it would be interesting to see if he had their soul. Because technically speaking, Wonder Woman did kill Ares, so she's now the god of war. So she should have some sort of relationship going on with the other gods. And it would be interesting to see that play out. And that would be really fun to watch. But also, I do not want to see this set in the Cold War. I want to see it set in the present day. That'd be very interesting. She said she was gone for 100 years, so if she's gone for 100 years, she should have no involvement in the Cold War. Also, I heard Captain Marvel, which is part of Marvel's line, is also going to be set near that time. So I don't think that that's the greatest idea to just have two movies that are kind of similarly set. But Wonder Woman 1 was really good. It was a past story, and you can keep this completely isolated from them because the Greek gods thing is just Wonder Woman. It has nothing to do with Superman or anyone else. So it'd be cool to see that. Man of Steel 2. This was not announced. Although we've heard a lot of things, we heard Matthew Vaughn might be doing it. For those of you who don't know Matthew Vaughn, he did Kick-Ass, he did X-Men's First Class, he did Kingsman. Kingsman 2 was not great. I did not like Kingsman 2. Kingsman 1 was very good. We do know he can do stuff like this. What he said in his interview about wanting to do something with Superman, he said he wants to do a modern day version of the 1978 Superman. I do not like that. I feel like Wonder Woman, the movie, was kind of that, so we don't need something too similar to that. My preferred choice is someone who also said he'd like to tackle Superman, and that's Darren Aronofsky. Why do I want Darren Aronofsky to do it? One, he loved Man of Steel. He understood that this is a progression. He understood that this is not just a Superman movie, it's an intro to Superman movie. And he said his story would follow from Man of Steel and would be a natural progression of Superman to become the Superman we know and love. So I'd like to see that. I would prefer to see that over just basically a rehashing of the Superman 1978 story. I don't need to see that again. I'm sorry, for those of you who don't know Darren Aronofsky, he's done The Wrestler, he's done Black Swan, Noah, which not everybody liked, Mother, which was actually kind of underrated in my opinion. It was really, really interesting to see, once you kind of get the idea that the hero, obviously, the main character obviously is God, and his wife Jennifer Lawrence is supposed to be Mother Nature. It kind of plays a different dynamic, and you go back and you look at it again. Now, last but not least, I wanted to talk about Flashpoint. Flashpoint was a very, very big deal because this was supposed to be a Flash movie, and then it said The Flash, Flashpoint. I was in Hall H. When that happened, I was like, whoa, that's big news. That's very, very cool. It's very interesting to learn that. For those of you who don't know, quickest thing about Flashpoint. Flashpoint is basically Barry Allen going back in time and saving his mom from being murdered. Now, as he does that, we all know about the butterfly effect, so it affects everything and the world changes. The world he comes back to, Bruce Wayne died, his parents did not die, his father became Batman, so that's Thomas Wayne, and it would be awesome to see Jeffrey Dean Morgan become the Batman. That would be very cool. And his wife, who was also a Walking Dead alum, I believe, as she became the Joker, which would also be cool to see play out. It's a very different universe, and basically it looks like it's going to be the end of times. It's Wonder Woman's army versus Aquaman's army, and it's a very cool storyline. And it's basically the Flash trying to get his powers back and reset the universe. But once he resets the universe, some things change. So it would be really cool if they really wanted to get rid of Ben Affleck. They could do that. They could get a younger Ben Affleck and tell younger Bruce Wayne and tell younger Batman stories instead of starting with a 40-something-year-old Batman and just kind of going from there. It would be really cool. They could kind of replace him, and that would be explained through this movie. You can make all sorts of changes you want. If you wanted to change Jesse Eisenberg and get someone else playing Lex Luthor, you can get Bryan Cranston to play Lex Luthor. You can get anyone else. You can get anyone you want, basically. You can kind of make those kind of minor changes and be like, oh, it's because of Flashpoint. The only person who knows is the Flash. And then you can get basically anything you want. You can change the Joker a little bit. You can remove his tattoos. You can change the exact actor completely, and it wouldn't make a difference because it'd be explained through Flashpoint. Basically, when he goes back and he resets the universe, a lot of things stay the same, some things change. For those of you who watch the Flash TV show, you know what I'm talking about. As Diggle's kid changed from a boy to a girl. But in general, most things stayed the same. But you can make minor changes here and there. You can tweak things if you wanted, and it'd be okay. So if you really can't get Ben Affleck to kind of agree with you on what you're trying to do, you can do that. Now, final thing I want to talk about is Geoff Johns. I did talk about him in my other video, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but all you need to know is he's all about Rebirth. He did Flash Rebirth, Green Lantern Rebirth. They were really, really good. He basically brought on New 52 and Aquaman's New 52 origin, and that was really cool. He did Batman Year One. He did Superman stories and stuff like that. He did Justice League for many, many years. He made Booster Gold cool again. He was responsible for all of DC Rebirth. He's done stories for years and years and years. He's basically DC's CCO, which is the creative officer, and he's now in charge of the DC Cinematic Universe. He's the Kevin Feige of the DC Cinematic Universe, which is very, very cool to me. That gets me very, very excited. I'm glad that it's in his hands. He handles the comic books. He should be handling the movies, and I'm glad to see the comics should be translating onto the movies because he's in charge, and he kind of has a good idea of which direction it should go in. At least that's what I think. Realistically, he's kind of been really set into place after Wonder Woman, or at least in the middle of Wonder Woman, so we're going to see what kind of impact he has on the DC Cinematic Universe. It's going to be really, really interesting for me to see. I really want to see how this plays out. I'm excited for the DC Cinematic Universe. I will do something for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but first, tell me what you guys think.
This is the Markham Knight telling you to like, comment, and subscribe.